evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 19 of the Third and Short Overtime podcast. We've all been having a good laugh just off air then. I don't know if someone's come back after a few weeks off or we're all just high on life. I'm not sure which one it is. It's good to have you back anyway, John.
Yeah, it's good to
the
be
Fab
back.
Four again. And also, we've got Bones and Mark as well. So we're going to do the week 3 talking points. But first off, we've put in a new little bit here. We're just going to have a go around each guy and the thoughts looking back at week 3, just like what they thought from week 3, just like a little briefing. I'm just going to get mine out of the way quickly. It's Seattle Seahawks that can't play in the second half, unfortunately, at the moment. You know, it's starting to turn on. And it's not, I aren't wearing a Jags jersey just because that's the reason that Seahawks playing bad, so I've gone to the Jags. No, it's just a nice shirt, and I'm repping Blake Bortles because no one else will. But yeah, Seahawks, it's a bit concerning at the moment from my part. You know, it's they seem to be getting the job done in the first half and putting themselves in good position to win games, and second half it just seems to be collapsing. And to be honest, I can't really put my finger on it really because it looks so good in the first half, and it's nothing like being found out or anything. It just seems to have halted. So yeah, that's an interesting thing to watch for me personally. I know I'm repping my team being a homer, but it's just something that's the last few weeks that's really stuck out for me. Mark, what about you? Any thoughts from week 3?
You know, I think if anybody had said to me, name 5 teams who will be unbeaten going into week 4, I don't think I would have named any of the, or maybe there's probably 4 of them I probably wouldn't have named. You know, the Rams look absolutely brilliant. Obviously, beat Tampa Bay this weekend. They go in with a winning record, and they look like the most likely who are going to continue that winning record. But the other teams, you know, who go in with the winning record, the other 4 teams who go in 3-0, my Las Vegas Raiders, the Arizona Cardinals, the Carolina Panthers, and the Denver Broncos. You know, who would have thought? Who would have thought that going into week 4, you know, them teams would be 3-0 even at this stage? I'm like you, Jordan. I'm rocking a team who's other than my own team. I don't mind what NFL jersey I wear. As long as I don't wear my inter-conference rival. I like to wear them around the house and in the gym, and I can find them quite cheap. I'm wearing Clay Matthews, number 52 today for the Green Bay Packers. Bones shaking his head because he's obviously a division rival. So I'm wearing this more sort of piss Bones off than anything else, you know. But yeah, 5 teams, 3-0, 4 of them I would never have picked at the start of the season.
Yeah, Clay Matthews, a fantastic cameo in Pitch Perfect 2. I don't know if that's gone under anyone else's there and stuff, but yeah, fantastic. I'm sure Bones would love to agree. How about you, Bones? You know, like Mark, a good point from Mark there. That's why we love the sport so much, because it's so, you know, like each week is so like out there and like it's so different and stuff. What about you? Did you see anything that stood out to you for week 3?
Week 3, yeah, I guess I mean I'm impressed personally that first of all the Lions were in any of the games they were in. Like we were never with 0-3. Let's be honest, we were a bad team, but we went out of the games at any point. You know, I mean, we were still within potentially giving them a run for the money. It didn't pan out any times, and if it had been Matthew Stafford, it probably would have. But that's besides the point. All my NFC Championship prediction and my MVP prediction not looking so ridiculous right now after the Rams went and beat reigning Super Bowl champions. I'm feeling pretty good about those predictions, but it's week 3. I don't want to overreact, but you know, I'm happy to see Stafford doing well in LA as well. I watched that game. That was probably my favorite game of the week because I said going into last week, that's my NFC Championship preview match. I want to watch that game, and it was good. It was enjoyable.
Yeah, well, like I did feel for your, Bones, in that one, because like even though like it was such a historic moment, that field goal kick, you know, it were.
Yeah, well, the less talked about that final drive, the better. I didn't want to bring that up, but you know, a missed jump call, a missed delay of game call, potential intentional grounding. But yeah, whatever. Have a 66-yard field goal. I don't care what is the record. Congratulations, Justin Tucker. You set a record that indoors as well. Let's just remember, I just wanted to credit Justin Tucker with this. This isn't a guy who had the wind at his back. This is an indoor stadium. He kicked it 66 freaking yards. Like, fair play to the guy, but they shouldn't have been in the position to have that field goal anyway. But either way, he did make it.
Sorry, Bones. JP, how about you?
Christ, well, I don't want to talk about last-second field goals either, to be honest. Don't support a good team from the West Coast that gets picked to do primetime games, otherwise you will go to bed at 4:35 a.m. having just seen your team lose on the last play of the game. To me, we were the direct inverse of the Seahawks. We were crap in the first half and good in the second half. So I don't really know what to make of this team just yet. But aside from that, I think we're still seeing things develop across the league. I don't think we really know who's good yet, but we certainly know who isn't good. New York, I'm looking at you. That was the main takeaway for me. Some of these teams look like they're in for a very, very long season indeed.
So JP's back after a few weeks off, and he's getting his dig on with the Giants there. So good to have you back. So that's our thoughts from week 3. Let's go straight into Stock Up, and Bones is going to pull the legendary piece of artwork he's got up there. It's fantastic work, and we're going to start off with Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, defensive coordinator of the Cowboys. He's had time at Seattle, so I remember him well. But we've put him up there because obviously they're doing really well on defense. I think I read somewhere they're one of the best, especially in coverage, one of the best defenses in the NFL at the moment. And this is coming off where they're one of the worst last year, and obviously they've added a few new tools on that side. But I'm really surprised how well they've done on defense. I knew that they would be fine on offense, but defense, they've Dan Quinn is really getting up like Diggs. Cornerback like last year wasn't at the best, but he's playing some really good football at the moment. And obviously, that we all know about Micah Parsons. Me and Mark talked about him a lot before he came in, and he's working miracles there. JP, obviously, you saw a bit of this. Bones. Sorry, bit of a mistake there, Bones. You've seen a bit of this Cowboys game.
Yeah, I watched the Manning cast of this game because, it's going away for a few Monday nights. But if anyone has got Game Pass, I recommend on Monday nights when it comes back watching Eli and Peyton talk about football because it's fascinating. Like I learn something new every week watching that. But the thing about Dallas this week is like their offense didn't really have to do as much. Like they ran the ball an awful lot because they were never behind. They didn't have to go for these big. Dak can throw the ball. The Dallas Cowboys can play, passing offense, but they didn't have to. Their defense played it sensationally. Like you mentioned, they went from one of the worst last year to one of the best this year, and for the most part, it is vastly the same personnel. Like, yeah, they added Micah Parsons. We all had in the draft previews them taking a defensive player. I think a lot of it was cornerbacks initially. We thought they were going to take quite high up, and I think the Cowboys is a very interesting one right now because they've flipped it with very little change other than coaching change, which really does go to show how much of an impact coaching can play on the game. But it was a good game. It was a really good game. And like I say, listening to Peyton and Eli talk about football and coverages and talking to all those other players and people is just absolutely fascinating. LeBron James was on it for a bit. It was really good.
Yeah, I think it's amazing what a few playmakers can do on one side of the ball to really improve how you view that side of the ball. Like the Cowboys were devastatingly bad last year. And realistically, this year, they're still giving up yardage and stuff like that. It's not that they're being really tight. It's that they've got bona fide playmakers on that side of the ball. The emergence of Trayvon Diggs here has been just huge for him. It's his third game in a row with an interception. This one was a pick six. Last year in the draft process when the Raiders took Arnett, there was 2 cornerbacks. There was actually 3 that I really liked, but one of them had already gone. Atlanta had taken Terrell, who I did like. The other 2 who I liked were Christian Fulton and Trayvon Diggs. What I liked about Diggs is what I've always said, he's an athlete. He's got really good hips. He turns really well. He stays in transition really well in man coverage, but he also makes plays on the ball. And he's got that NFL pedigree in his brother, Stephon Diggs, as well. And last year, he had a rough ride in Dallas, but everybody did. But there was glimpses of Trayvon Diggs at the back end of last year where you kind of went, yeah, it's starting to come together for this rookie. This year, the kid's just been, absolutely lights out. Not so much this game, but the game before when they played the LA Chargers, they played a very, very good LA Chargers offense. You look at that LA Chargers team. You've got Mike Williams, who's balling. You've got Eckler. You've got Keenan Allen. And you've got Justin Herbert, who's fast developing and looks absolutely terrific. Looks absolutely terrific. That Dan Quinn defense held them to just 17 points in LA. And Trayvon Diggs shut Keenan Allen down. How many corners out there are shutting Keenan Allen down? You know what I mean? No, Keenan Allen's going to be a 10-catch, 100-yard game kind of wide receiver week in, week out. But yet, Trayvon Diggs just looks like he's progressing. And, it looks like he's going to be a fixture in the NFL for a long time, which I think anybody who were watching him at Bama, bearing in mind he came out as a junior, saw that he had this potential in him,
I've got just a quick one for you, Mark Fireback, because obviously, I know Dan Quinn well from Seattle Times, and he obviously had some fantastic players, and he all round coaching is fantastic. Cowboys were so bad last year. What has he made every area better, or is there certain areas that he's made better?
I wouldn't say that he's made every single area better. They're playing a cover 3, which when you play a cover 3, it means that you drop 3 deep. And it means that it's about cover 3. What cover 3 is about? We play a cover 3 as well at the Raiders. It's about not giving up the big play, but letting the opposition have the underneath. What you need to be able to do is you need to be switched on. Because what you need to do is you need to come downhill and stop them yards after carry. I mean, the cover 3, Joe, and you've played in it for a long time as well. It seems to me that he's got the right players in the right position to do what he wants to be able to do. Micah Parsons is incredibly reactive. He can play in defense and he can cover sideline to sideline. Trayvon Diggs is getting really sticky in coverage and shutting people down. And he's opportunistic when the ball's in the air. They brought in Keanu Neal from the Atlanta Falcons, who's a safety who's now been converted to a linebacker. Again, he gives that kind of pace on that underneath. So when you're giving them the underneath throws and you're like, we're going to stop the 20-yard bump, but we're going to let you have this 4-yard dump off. It's important to not let that 4-yard dump off turn into an 11-yard gain. And players like Keanu Neal and Micah Parsons who are flying around the ball and that kind of stuff, they're making that work, I wouldn't say that they're frightening at pass rush. Like Lawrence is probably their best pass rusher and he's out, and Micah Parsons has come in and generated pass rush, but we all said he's that kind of freak athlete, he'll be able to do that. But I mean, I wouldn't say their front four's brilliant, but what I would say is they've got pace and they've got playmakers in the right areas. And that's kind of what's making this defense look better. The fact that they've got a couple of playmakers in Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah, cheers, Mark. It'd be interesting to watch them going forward. They were so bad last year. It could only get better surely this year, and it's got significantly better. And I see your points there, Mark. Just each different, taking one play at a time and just not giving up the big plays and stuff, and you can put the pressure back on the offense, putting them in 2nd and 10, 2nd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, putting pressure back on them. And if you're just giving up first downs constantly, you're just going to put the pressure back on yourself. So it'll be interesting to see them how they go forward.
I mean, it's never going to be a stingy shutdown defense, but you've got to remember it doesn't have to be. What the Cowboys have is they have a bona fide top 5 offense. They don't need to have a top 10 defense and a top 5 offense to be good this year. What they need to have is they need to maintain what they've got on offense, which at this moment in time, it was Zeke who went off this week and Dalton Schultz. You know what I mean, though? It seems to be a different person every week who's going off for the Cowboys, which is ideal. Ruggs. 1 week it's Lamb. Next week it's Cooper. Then it's Pollard. And this week it was Zeke and it was Dalton Schultz. So they've got a bucket load of weapons there. They don't need to have a top 5 offense and a top 10 defense. What they've got to have is they've got to have a defense that gets the middle of the pack. And that's what this defense is doing. Turnovers will win you games, especially when you go into the playoffs. And this is a team that's got players who have got the potential to turn the ball over for you, and give you good field position. Or in this case, capitalize up with a pick 6, Jordan?
Yeah. No, definitely. So moving on to the next one, it were only a matter of time before he came on. He obviously had his struggles in week 1, but we know how good of a quarterback Josh Allen is. and he's really stepped up over these last few games, and he's gone on the stock up this week after last week's performance. John, you watched this one. What did you make of Josh Allen? I know we know he's good anyway, but did you see the old Josh Allen from last season coming at the back end?
Yeah, I was watching with interest because, to be honest, I've seen a little bit of the Bills, the first couple of weeks, and they were kind of, I wouldn't say winning in spite of him, but he certainly wasn't the force of nature he was last season. He was generating their entire offense at one point last season. They had no running game. He was basically the guy. Wasn't really seeing that this year. And even in week 2, they had a big win, but it was largely down to defensive play rather than anything spectacular by the offense. So I was kind of intrigued going into this week as to what they would be able to do against Washington. We've talked up Washington a lot on this podcast, defensively. I think in general as a team, we've talked about quite a bit. So for me, it was a real test of how good he was, and I thought he was excellent. The game I saw from him was very much reminiscent of last season. And given that they're handing out that big contract on him, I think the Bills will have been relieved to see that, but also it makes them a real contender in that conference now. Because if he's playing at that same level, they're going to be very, very tough to beat.
Yeah, John, I never watched this game, so I'm going to ask you some questions on it. But before I do, this is telling that this answers some questions about Josh Allen for me. We all said it. What Josh Allen is the Josh Allen. Is it 2019, 2018 Josh Allen, who was one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks going, who generated yards through his legs, who was still a playmaker, but wasn't always making it happen through his arm. And then obviously last year he had this absolute massive leap. And you thought, well, is that the real Josh Allen or is that the anomaly? Which one is it? And the way the season started off, it made me kind of think, well, maybe somewhere in between the middle of 2019 and 2020. This game, at least in the box scores, and this is what I'm going to ask you, looks like it was 2020 Josh Allen. It looks like it was the closest carbon copy to what Josh Allen was last year, which, let's face it, was a bona fide MVP challenger. He was absolutely terrific. He had a PFF grade over 90. The kid played unbelievable last year. I guess there was always that worry because we'd always seen it. Well, not for us personally, we're not invested in him, but I guess for the owners of Buffalo who give him that big contract, there was always going to be that worry of us. Is this an anomaly? This has got to make them feel better, John. I mean, was his game as good as his box score say?
For me, yeah, I thought he was excellent. I think there was a few games last season where his stats were incredible, but he didn't actually have that good a game when you watched it live, But I think this was probably one of those games where the two married up really well. I thought he was superb, and you're absolutely right. You never really know how a player is going to respond to a big contract. Once they make the big money, it's kind of some players do check out or maybe aren't as driven to be top players. And a team like Buffalo, which is traditionally not a contender, that's even more likely for me. They're not, generally they've not been up there year in, year out and things like that. So sometimes you get a bit of a drop off there. But I thought he looked really good. I think you're right. I think there's an element of, okay, do we actually know much about this guy? We've seen one incredible year and one bad year. And the fact is that teams will adjust to him this season because they've seen what he's capable of now. And I wondered in the first couple of weeks, okay, if teams found him out a little bit, they've got a full season of film on him and that offense now. It's not really changed a lot in the off season. Our team's working on shutting it down. And to an extent, I suppose they probably are, but Washington were nowhere near doing it to him the other day. I thought that was one of the performances of the week.
Do you know what I find interesting with the Bills at this moment in time, and particularly when I look at this, just how they're doing it, and it's not all on Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen this time. Last year, that connection between them two was so key, and we all pointed out in the preseason they don't really have a running game as much. They're probably the most effective runner on their team is probably Josh Allen, and Devin Singletary and Zach Moss are a bit of a mishmash of skills together, which create one running back. So we know that they're not going to be a team who are going to be continually running the ball 25, 30 times a game. And really, I suppose, the worry would have been is, will teams not just double up on Diggs and shut him down. I saw Dawson Knox got a touchdown in this. I really liked him as a tight end coming in. He looks like he's emerging as a young tight end, and they favour him in the red zone. He got some touchdowns last year. He's in the paint again this year. Emmanuel Sanders really impressed us in this game, to be honest, as well. I didn't think he had much left in the tank, and I don't know how much he has. But one thing is for sure, he's been a very good number 2 wide receiver in this league for a long time. And they've got to be pleased with how he's came in and being able to lighten some of them targets off Stephon Diggs and give them an option B, I suppose, John, you know?
Yeah, Sanders is a really interesting case because I think he's one of those receivers that obviously he played for us for a little bit in the Super Bowl run, played for the Saints last year. He's not a guy now that's got the athletic ability to run away from players, but what he does have, like a lot of receivers that had long careers, he's got the brains. And he's a guy that Josh Allen really needs, I think, a veteran guy that can get open on third down, who can get open for possession catches, because we know what Diggs can do. You know, and we know what a couple of the other guys on that offense can do. They need another solid contributor, and I think they've got it with him. I really like Emmanuel Sanders. It was a bit of an under-the-radar signing because there weren't many teams chasing him this year because he didn't have a great season last season, but I think he's worked out really well for them. I think they've got to keep putting those kind of weapons around him, and the more he has of those, as you say, it's less easy to double up on the big names like Diggs and stuff. So yeah, I thought he was excellent this week as well.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sanders. Like I said, there's not much expected on him. You know, obviously you've got Diggs there, and for how much trouble Beasley's caused in the offseason, he's still a reliable target for the Bills. You know, he picks up a lot. He has probably more so than he did at the Cowboys. Really, his game's really lifted since going over there. And I agree with Mark as well. Dawson Knox. It's just going to be down to that running game. Like you say, probably not going to ask them to run that much, but there's going to be games when they need to run, and that'll be the big question for the Bills. I've got no problems with Josh Allen. I think he's a fantastic quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Can throw any ball you want, you know, on his day. And like I say, it rightfully deserves to be on stock up this week after last week's performance. So moving on to the final one, it's the Cleveland defense. Obviously, it was against the Bears, but you only can play who's in front of you, and they did exactly that. I didn't actually watch this game, but I know they had a lot of sacks, but I know Bones watched it. So how bad was it?
I mean, it was pretty bad. I mean, I watched it, and I think what's interesting to look at here is I don't think this is Justin Fields failing necessarily. I don't think this is their running backs failing necessarily. This seems to be, and like the O-line got absolutely eaten alive by the Browns. Like last year, the Bears had like 2 1,000-yard rushes on the season by the end of the year, and this game they couldn't even get that going. Like it's one thing having a rookie quarterback and not being able to get the rookie quarterback going in his first couple of games. You know, it's tough, but not being able to get either of your 1,000-yard rushers going at all is bad. Like that's bad, and there were standout players across that front seven for the Browns. I mean, what do you think, Mark? Would you agree that this looks like it's as much the Bears O-line just being utter trash as it is the Browns eating them, or do you think this is all the Browns being monsters?
To be honest with you, when you look at the statistics, you know, like Matt Nagy called it an awful game here. Just absolutely awful. Just flat awful. You know, and in this Browns front ate the Bears alive. You know, like there was 9 sacks, which you said. I'll go through the pressures for the Browns off defensive line in a moment. Overall, the Bears in this game only gained 47 yards. That's all they gained in this game. They had 68 passing yards, but they lost 67 yards in sacks. So they gained a net 1 yard on passing. I read somewhere that Justin Fields was under pressure 55% of all snapbacks. Now that's not just passing dropbacks. That's all dropbacks. That means that over half the time that ball was being snapped, there was players in the backfield pretty much instantly. And there was GOK shutting down the run with tackles for loss. Miles Garrett had himself a good game. Jadeveon Clowney looked really impressive this game. Miles Garrett's obviously going to get the load. It's 4.5 sacks. It's just tremendous. He looks superhuman. He's just absolutely freaking nature, and he's right up there with Joey Bosa as the best pass rusher in the NFL. And I would still say Chase Young, even though his production isn't matching what he is. I would say, but Jadeveon Clowney looked like the Jadeveon Clowney who was being drafted. I think, he spent some time on your Seattle Seahawks. He went to the Titans. He seems to have found a home here in Cleveland, opposite Myles Garrett. And the two of them wreaked havoc. Before I go to the breakdowns of pressures and stuff like that, I'm sure Jordan will want to comment something on Jadeveon Clowney because he can be frustrating, but the talent's there. And I think this is why players in NFL franchise keep on giving him a chance, because the talent's obviously there. And yeah, it just looks like Cleveland and Myles Garrett and, what they're doing there, he's bought into it. I wish you had seen it, Jordan, or at least I'm sure you wish you'd seen it.
Yeah, but like you said, he came to us and I was excited when he came over. I thought it was a fantastic deal, and we just didn't see the production that we saw at the Texans, and I know he had a few injuries over there as well, but he's still at big numbers. And I just wonder. I'll come on. JP can touch on this straight after, but I just wonder. I don't remember who was at the Titans when he was there last year. I can't remember if they had a standout edge rush, but he had JJ Watt at the Texans, and he's got what's his name now? Lost his name.
Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett. We've got Myles Garrett on the Browns now. Does he need that extra special guy playing on the opposite side for him who might get double teamed to give him more options? I don't mean that as in he's a bad player, JP, but do you think that is something where we see the best of him when he's got that extra special talent playing alongside him on the other side?
I think if you look at most pass rushers in the league, that's true. That's true of the vast majority, isn't it? You need to rush in a group, really. You need depth. You need rotations. You can't be on the only one I can immediately think of off the top of my head who doesn't rotate a great deal is Joey Bosa. I think everybody else is pretty much in a rotation, almost like pitchers in baseball. It's bizarre how specialized that position seems to have become now. And I think it's ideal for Clowney. I think Clowney's one of those guys, 10 to 15 snaps a game, get after the quarterback. I just think it's perfect role for him. And I think what we are seeing is kind of a microcosm of, one, his career, but also who he was as a prospect coming out. He's very hot and cold, but what a lot of people saw was a lot of those highlights in big games. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he was one of those guys that disappeared against premier competition. But he was one of those guys that was a bit off and on, not occasionally dominant. And I think it's kind of translated to the pros. And obviously, as you alluded to, he had a lot of injuries as well. I think one of the injuries that he had microfracture surgery for, which is usually the death knell for an NFL career. So, I mean, to be playing at the level he is now is pretty impressive. But I think you're right. Yeah, I think it does help that he's got those people to work with. He's got, sorry, I'm really struggling with my cough at the minute. He's got those people to work with. He's got a rotation that he's part of. And that Browns defense, probably from 1 to 11, is pretty talented as well. The back end helps because the better the coverage is, the more time you get to pass rush as well. So I think is perhaps an underrated thing these days.
Fields couldn't get anything going this game. And I think it's hard to put it on the rookie. It wasn't like he was taking a hold on the ball or taking too long to make decisions. The ball was literally in his hands. And the second it was in his hands, he had bodies on him. And this pressure count will show you. Myles Garrett had 26 pure pass rushing snaps, 8 pressures, and an additional 5 sacks on top of it. Jadeveon Clowney was actually in on all pass rushing sets alongside him. 6 pressures, 2 sacks additional on it. Malik Jackson, 25 pass rushing snaps, 2 pressures, 1 sack. Takk McKinley, 15 pass rushing snaps, 2 pressures, 1 sack. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was only asked to pass rush 3 times. He had a pressure and a sack out of it. Rodney Harrison, the safety, was sent on 2 blitzes. That generated a pressure and a sack. What's a young quarterback going to do when he's facing that kind of onslaught? The ball was in his hands, and there was literally people on top of him. You know, at this stage of his career, Jason Peters is just an A4 piece of paper at left tackle for the Bears, because that's all he is. He's just a CV. That's all he is. He's a CV. He's living off his past name. And it's horrible to see, because, look, Jason Peters is going to go to the Hall of Fame. You know, like, he's been one of the best left tackles throughout his career. But what we're seeing there at this moment in time is just a CV at left tackle. He's a gate. He's a piece of paper. He's that easy to get around. And look, we all had promise for the Bears at the start of the season, and we were all quite excited for what they were going to do with Justin Fields. With this O-line this bad, I don't know. Like, you cannot. I don't know what they're going to do. And Matt Nagy as well needs to simplify his play calling and give his kids a chance. It was a really dominant performance by the Browns. You know, and the Bears defense kind of did their part. They hung around, and the Robert Quinn had a good game and stuff like that. Like, you know, I mean, it just must be frustrating for the Bears fans that once you've got one side of the ball performing, you can't get the other side performing. The game was lost at the end of the second quarter, just going in before half time. Baker Mayfield led a really nice long drive and finished it with a lovely touchdown pass to Austin Hooper. And from that point, like, the game was just gone for the Chicago Bears, and Fields was really in survival mode, you know. But I think that if Clowney can be this number 2 to Myles Garrett, I think this is the best pass rushing duo you've got in the NFL at the moment. I think this is the best bracket you've got. And the two of them are so versatile. Both of them can kick inside, they can switch ends, they can rush from different positions. If they continue this form, they're going to be really hard to stop those two. They're going to get sacks this year. I think Garrett's going to get. I think Garrett could be on for breaking the record, if truth be told, because Jadeveon Clowney means that you've got to assign something to him as well, you know.
Yeah, I think like we mentioned earlier, with the Cowboys' offense being so good, and the defense is obviously stepped up, but not as you don't have to too much, and it's not as good as the offense. But I look down at this Cleveland team, and they just look really good on defense, really stacked. You know, like even in the back. You know, obviously we've mentioned in the past what they've brought over, and the offense. You just have to look at the offense. They know they're good. They've got a 1-2 punch, you know, on offense, you know, with Chubb and Hunt. Chubb, I did see a few highlights of this and of Chubb and Hunt especially, and they looked unbelievable. You know, like they were, especially Kareem Hunt. I can't remember how much they pay him now, because obviously I had his problems, and I don't think they paid him as much. But they must be stealing whatever they're paying him. It mustn't be that much. But he was unbelievable. He was like an RB1 that get paid a lot of money elsewhere. Obviously, we'll see what happens with that, but. Yeah, Mark, I know you want to touch on Mayfield real quick.
Yeah, look, I think we all give Mayfield a bit of stick, and I think it's probably because of the adverts during NFL Network that we don't like him. You know, Mayfield's progressing as a quarterback in this system. He's never going to be a world beater. He's not going to be Josh Allen like we were talking about earlier on. He's going to be a fringe top 10 quarterback, but he's making some really good throws. He's got such a very, very strong arm. You know, like, he's got a right cannon for an arm as Mayfield, you know. And I think people overlook that because he's quite slight and he's quite small, but his arm's huge. You know what I mean? Or he's got a real good fastball. And the throw that he threw to Hooper, you know, like for the touchdown, was just something of beauty. And he's surrounded by playmakers. OBJ was back in this game making grabs. Kareem Hunt was just marvelous with the ball in his hands and catching the ball. You know, you've got Chubb who can punish teams. This is a really well balanced team. This is a really well balanced team. This Browns team, and with the Chiefs in them not looking like they're struggling at the start of the season, this Browns team could be the best team in the AFC. You know.
Yeah, it's one that I think a few of us said at the start of the season that it's one team to look out for and see if they could push. We said the Chiefs at the time, and I know it's early, but Chiefs are 1-2 at the moment, and they one win came against them, so it's one to look out for. I'm just going to throw that before we move on to stock down. I'm just going to, obviously, Jamie from the Third and Short has been mentioning his love affair with Jameis Winston, which seems to be just go on. And obviously, yeah, the stats are right that most of them says, but I didn't watch the Patriots game, but I'm just looking at the box stats, and he had 13 for 21, 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. He obviously didn't have to do much, and I don't think Patriots put that much pressure on teams at the moment anyway as well. So, I think we've always said that put pressure on Jameis, he crumbles. He crumbles like a rubbish, absolute rich tea. When you dunk it in a cup of tea and it all falls to bits in at the bottom. That's what Jameis Winston's like when he put pressure on him. Give him time. He'll throw touchdowns, yeah. But I look at them box scores: 13, 21, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. Looks like college quarterback, to be honest with you, with a run team. But I didn't watch the game, so I can't comment too much. But we all know that Jameis Winston is bang average, don't we, lads? I think we can all
below bang average. You know, like when we think about it, you know, if you want to put anything on stock up, unless Jameis Winston's playing on defense and catching interceptions from Mac Jones, you know what I mean? Though, like he's not going on to stock up because it was the Saints defense that won this game. 3 interceptions. That's
Again.
What won this game. Again,
the Green Bay game was the exact same story. It was entirely the Saints defense that won the game, and Jameis just went, like once.
It's a very good defense. This Saints defense is very good. It's arguably currently maybe the best in the NFL. Maybe, you know what I mean. Or with the Browns, you could compete with maybe, you know. But this Saints defense is a very, very good defense. And when you're taking the ball out, I mean, you know, turnovers are going to win you games, just like Jameis Winston's turnovers are going to throw you games, you know. And that's what you see. That's what you see, don't you? You know, Jameis Winston cost them the other week, and the defense watered back this week, and it's all about turnovers. You know, if you can limit Jameis's turnovers and just get him to dink and dunk a little bit and get him to play conservatively and try, for the love of God, to get him to use a brain or whatever he's got in there, his T-Rex walnut brain that he has. You know what I mean? Though you'll be all right. But it's about protecting him. He's terrible under pressure. But you know what happens? You know when you build a lead, teams can't pass rush you because you've got a lead. You know what I mean? And you're just going to run the ball, and that's what's happening. You know, when they're playing for the lead, they're not seeing pass rush, and Jameis will look all right. But if they go behind and they're having to throw the ball, Jameis is going to look terrible. But it's the defense. It's the defense that should really be stock up. If anything, unless Jameis is playing corner, I'm not putting him on stock up, like, you know.
I think that's
quickly. What about this comment though? Like, just someone come in on this.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll come in because I'm known as the biggest Winston hater on this podcast. So I think Mark's pushing me close. I feel like I'm going to end up saying this till I'm blue in the face, which the way I'm feeling at the moment might not actually be that long. But it's Sean Payton. It's not Jameis Winston. You could put. There's that old thing about if you give an infinite amount of monkeys an infinite amount of typewriters, they'll eventually write Shakespeare. Well, it's similar for Sean Payton. If you keep sticking dodgy quarterbacks, he will get something out of them. That's who he is as a coach. He's a top-class coach. I think people are massively underestimating that. And you're right, the defense is a big part of what they're doing right now. But basically what they're doing is they're getting themselves a lead and then basically turning it over to Winston and going, don't fuck it up. And 2 weeks out of 3, he hasn't done that. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, he won't do enough. He's to use an old Bill Walsh quote, he plays just good enough to get you beat. So that's where it's going to end. I know I've just seen the comment in the chat, Payton's a dick. I'm not saying I like the guy. I'm saying he's a good coach. You know, there is a difference. As for the more ints than Jameis Winston, well, yeah, I mean, Murray and Mahomes throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field on given passing plays. That generally leads to more interceptions. Plus, they're throwing the ball about 3 times more often. You know, it's the Saints' offense at the moment is Pop Warner football, and it happens to be working because the defense is really good and Sean Payton is really good. I am sick to death of having to have this discussion about Jameis Winston every week. He is not a good NFL quarterback. Anyway, deep breaths.
Do you know if he was a good NFL quarterback, the team who drafted him number one overall wouldn't have let him go after his rookie deal? That's if he was a good quarterback, that's what would have happened. And you know what would have happened after he had been left? Teams would have been queuing up to sign him instead of the Saints getting him at the last possible minute, where like almost Jameis Winston's paying them to play football. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know on what planet people are on where people are coming out going, Jameis Winston is a viable NFL starting quarterback.
Let's be fair here, it's not people.
System. He will be in this system with this defense. But you put Jameis Winston in 31 other franchises, and Jameis Winston is not looking good. He doesn't even look good here. You know what I mean? He doesn't even look here. It's just a mental kind of thing. I just don't get it. You know what I mean? No, it's if you want to praise anything in this, praise Sean Payton and praise the Saints defense, because that's what's winning the games.
I think we can put a full stop on that and never have to speak about this again. Jamie Crawford's probably going to leave the chat as we're speaking now. He's devastated. But moving on to Stock Down, we're going to come back to you, Matt, because obviously I didn't see any of the Raiders game. You've got Andre James on there. Tell us why Andre James is on there.
Because he can't snap the ball. That's the top and bottom of it. He's a centre who can't snap the ball. You know, and it's not so much, I'm not digging out Andre James. This is a bit of something in general, okay? Andre James was a centre that for the last 3 years has been buried on the practice squad of the Raiders. We've been fortunate enough to have an all-pro centre in Rodney Hudson ahead of him. James came in for one game, didn't look great, but didn't fuck it up either. And all we've heard for the last year or two is how we've got this young centre who Tom Cable loves, who's understudied to Rodney Hudson, and we've let Rodney Hudson go and he's still got something in the tank, and we've brought this kid in who's meant to be his heir apparent. Now, I'm not an offensive line coach. I don't proclaim to be an offensive line coach. John, you've been an offensive line coach. I imagine that one thing that centers do a lot is snap the ball, especially out of shotgun. Bearing in mind, in college, you play about 90% of snaps out of shotgun. But he was an offensive tackle in college. But I'm guessing he should be able to snap the ball. The amount of balls which are coming hot, high to Derek Carr off the hands of Andre James is unbelievable. We've played 3 games, and in each game, there's been one snap which has went directly over the head of Derek Carr. Against the Baltimore Ravens, it cost us 21 yards. Okay. Against the Steelers, it cost us 16 yards. And this week, it cost us 18 yards. Thank God there hasn't been a turnover from them yet. But, you know, this is one of those things. Stock down. You know, we've probably all had a player who we've moved on from. And we've probably thought, oh, maybe that was a year too early. Andre James makes me think we moved away from Rodney Hudson way too early. At this case, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know if one of my friends, Matt, another Matt who I know, not Matt, the other podcast Matt, but another Matt says that linesmen, that offensive line coaches tend to keep the girls that they went to the dance with. So I'm guessing that Tom Cable is going to be loyal to Andre James because he's put his flag in him. But he's a disaster waiting to happen. He's a real disaster waiting to happen. A centre who can't snap the ball. Have you ever heard of anything so ridiculous in your life? And even the ones that he does snap as well, he's having to slow it down. It's like underarming them to Derek Carr. You know what I mean? So much so that the Raiders are having to go under centre and not play on the snap gun, on the shotgun, in order to generate offense because this kid's so bad at snapping the ball.
John, you are the centre man, offensive line man.
It's a bizarre thing, isn't it? You would think that would be like job number one for a centre is to be able to snap the ball. It's literally the biggest thing they do on the football field. I know some centres do struggle with shotgun snaps because if they've not done it, it's not a thing that comes naturally to you. You do kind of have to work at it. But also, you would be practicing it constantly. I know when we used to coach, you get the centre and quarterback exchange. They would be doing that in the warm-up because you have to get familiar with each other. Now, maybe that's the issue. He's obviously come in late because Hudson, I think he left quite late in the off-season, didn't he? I feel like it wasn't early on. So maybe there's something there. Maybe they've not had a ton of practice time together. Although at this point, 3 weeks into the season, you would be expected something. It's truly bizarre. I must admit, I don't watch a lot of the Raiders games. I've seen sort of the end of the last few, but I keep seeing the bad snaps on red zone, and I think to myself that there's guys that I used to coach that could snap the ball better than that, and it feels such a fundamental skill to be a centre in the NFL that I just can't work it out. I just cannot work it out how he's not able to do it on a consistent basis. You're going to get one wrong every now and then. That's football, right? You don't get everything right. But to have one in every game, at least, is mind-boggling, to be honest.
John, his snaps are that bad. I count the good ones instead of count the bad ones. It's a surprise when there's one that's right. You're like, oh, he's had a good snap. And then the next three, like there's one here, there's one there, there's one hour here. Hey, thank God that Derek Carr's an athletic quarterback. It's like it's like he's playing shortstop in baseball, is what the commentator said this week. And it really is. He's catching the ball's going out. It's like he's playing goalkeeper. It's like he's playing shortstop in baseball. It's got the point now though, where the Raiders are having to not run out of shotgun. And in second halves and things like that, having to go predominantly under centre because the kid's that bad at it. You know, we've got Nick Martin, who's been in the NFL and been a starting centre for a long time. And granted, he's not great. He's very average across the board at run blocking and pass blocking. But at least he can snap. One thing for Andre James is what I would say is he looks good in pass blocking. He looks woeful in run blocking. Did you see that clip I sent you this week? Where Andre James just got flattened in a run block. Luckily, the player flattened him so easily, tripped over him, and ended up on the ground as well. You know, it's the two of them ended up on the ground. But Andre James is just folded like this, you know what I mean? In some sort of run block, but it kind of worked because he managed to trip him up at the same time. It's just becoming comical, and for a team that's doing so much right, this is a really big wrong list, and it's funny. It's funny, but it's not funny because it's my team. You know what I mean?
I think I'm going to be honest with you. Like I didn't know much about him, to be honest with you, Mark. He played for he came from UCLA as undrafted, and he must have it's 2019, so that's just before I started watching college football. But UCLA are known for a good offensive line in the run, so it's surprising that you say that he's quite bad in the run game. But I remember that video you put a big chat. It's comical, really. Like obviously, I can see it probably hurts you a bit more because it's your team, but it is comical.
I think what makes it worse is that we clearly like them so much because we give him a big contract the day after Rodney Hudson left, and we'd only seen him play a handful of snaps for us. But Tom Cable had been going on. You know, he'd been on the practice squad. He'd been learning. Tom Cable was going, don't worry about Rodney Hudson going. We've got this kid Andre James who's a ready-made replacement. And we were hearing that as early as last season, to be honest with you. Look, Tom Cable's a really good offensive line coach, what he's done for Colton Miller. And, Illumino, the British lad who's came in and looks brilliant at guard, looks very steady to the point where I think, we're not going to lose much from Good. In fact, we might have improved, from Good being injured. John Simpson looks decent enough. He's coming along at guard. Leatherwood's struggling to say it best, particularly in pass rushing sets. And he's not even that good at run blocking, really, which is what but he's young. He's young and he's not young. He's a senior. But you know what I mean? he's young in his NFL career, is what I meant to say. And you've got to think that he's going to learn something. This is the big red mark on the Raiders roster at this moment in time. I'm willing to give Leatherwood time because he's new. But this kid's been there 3 years and been studying and practicing and groomed for the last 3 years to take over from Rodney Hudson. If this is what we've got moving forward, it's going to be entertaining for those who's watching Red Zone and watching the Raiders.
Okay, we'll leave that as there. Moving on to the next stock down, it's rookie quarterbacks who have, out of all the games so far, they've managed one win, which came from Mac Jones. Out of them all, the only guy that's got a win at the moment. Granted, Davis Mills has played one game for the Texans, and he's only lost one. And to be fair, I watched that Thursday night highlights game. He didn't look too bad, Davis Mills. To say that he was drafted so low, I remember him from Stanford. He's a steady away player, and he did okay. He's not an extraordinary lights out player like Mahomes and so on, but he's he did okay. I know we touched on Justin Fields a little bit, so I'll just touch on that before I get the other guys' opinions on the others. Justin Fields, we know that the Bears' offensive line were bad, didn't give him much time, but when he did have time, you could see the talent in him. He made, I think it were 2 or 3 really good throws when he actually did get the time. I know not much of it. So he is a talent, Justin Fields, but obviously it's just one of them things where the offensive line's not helping him. And sometimes he's a rookie, so he holds on to the ball just a little too long and a bit undecisive with maybe making a run and gaining some extra yards instead of holding around looking for that throw. Like I say, he's a rookie, he's going to make these mistakes, but you'd hope that your O-line would hold out a bit better on more snaps to give you a bit more time. I'll move on to the other guys now. But Bones, Mac Jones, obviously he's the only guy with a win. He's a steady away player like Davis Mills, but the thing that I've seen with him, I haven't seen much of the Patriots, but what I have seen is that he's looking decent while just playing short yardage passes. What would you say? That's true?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. He's playing the New England playbook, and I know this week he had a rough week. He had a few interceptions, at least one of which was definitely the more on the receiver than it was on Mac. It should not have been. It should have been brought in. You got to come down with those balls, but that's besides the point. The playbook is what it is with New England. You expect pretty short yardage, so he's not out of the rookie quarterbacks got the biggest yards. They run the ball a lot because that's the kind of offense they tend to run. So we've seen a lot of the backfield involvement. The rotation of their stable of running backs. There's been a lot of situations where the game hasn't been riding on him, so his stats aren't incredible. But yeah, like you say, he's the only one with a win. New England did win against the Jets, I think it was, of all teams. But he looks good. He looks like he's going to be able to handle the New England playbook in the future. I think it's the problem with rookie quarterbacks, which I guess is why they're on stock down, isn't it? It is the NFL is hard. It's not college anymore. You're playing a different ball game, and it's going to take a bit of adjustment, I think. And yeah, I think Mac looks solid in his place, but I mean, there has to be more. There's only one receiver, I think it's Myers, that we've really seen him connect on the regular with. That they seem to have a connection, but outside of that, these tight ends that Bill brought in over the offseason haven't produced nearly as much offense as I think we all thought. Bringing in Jonnu Smith and his name escapes me. Hunter Henry, yeah, thank you. Bringing both of those guys, those are not bad tight ends in this league, and I just don't think we've seen them produce nearly as much as I think most people thought they would. So yeah, I think going forward it could be good.
Yeah, Mac Jones has definitely landed himself in the best situation, which is why I think most of the time he looks like the most stable NFL quarterback. What you've got to remember is, when you're drafting at the top of the draft, it's because you're not a very good team. That's normally why you're picking number 1 or number 2, is because your team's rubbish. And you're not going to mask all those holes with a quarterback. And that's what we're seeing with Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. They're in really bad situations. That's why the Jags and the Jets were picking number 1 and number 2. Trevor Lawrence hasn't got a great array of weapons to throw to. He's got an offensive coordinator. He's got a head coach who's feeling his way around the game, an offensive coordinator who's very bland. He hasn't got great weapons around him. Etienne, who was drafted alongside him, is injured already. You know what I mean? And he's not in a very good situation. He's still a very good quarterback. There's throws there where you think, yeah, he's the best quarterback in this class. There is times where he looks brilliant. I'm not worried about these players, though, because they've been put into situations which are really terrible for them. The same would be said for Zach Wilson. The Jets are an absolute mess. They've got very few players and playmakers you can hang your hat on, and the ones that have got are very young and early in their career. He's in a very, very bad situation. What they've got. I think what is alarming with the team like the Jets is that they've got nobody in there who can spell him when the going gets tough. It's going to be Zach Wilson, and that's it. It's going to be, he's in a baptism of fire. Trevor Lawrence has got a bit more of that personality. I think he will be protected a little bit because he did go number 1. I think if there's heat on anybody at this moment, it's going to be Zach Wilson because he's in New York. But What are you asking the kid to do? Who's he going to pass to? Who's he got to protect him? Who's in his backfield? You know what I mean? Or he's in a really horrible situation. And back to another horrible situation, Fields. We talked about the line at the Bears. You know, you cannot expect your quarterback to pass the ball if you can't protect them. If he's got like 0.5 seconds, if he's got 0.5 of a second, how can you expect the kid to go through progressions, read and deliver a ball? So they're in really difficult situations. At least 3 of these 4 are. And I would probably say Lawrence and Zach Wilson are in the most difficult because they're the worst 2 teams. I think there's a lot of pressure. And I'm going to come to you, John. I know you're going to have a little bit to say on this, but you're sitting there with Trey Lance. And I know that there's a clamour from San Francisco 49ers fans, yourself included, to get Trey Lance in and give him a start. One thing I would say is Trey Lance is in a better situation than these. But there's got to, you know, when you look at what's happening to these at the top of the draft, you know, like you've got to think maybe Shanahan got it right all along, keep Garoppolo there and to bring Lance along slowly.
Yeah, it's like I said on Monday on the other pod. It's hard to quantify what you do with Lance because if you think you're a contender, which I think we do think we are, you can't really throw a rookie out there. You know, I think it's asking a lot of a guy that has played other than the snaps he's had for us, 1 professional football game in 2 years or something stupid like that. You know, it's asking a lot of the guy, really. On the other quarterbacks, I mean, you touched on it yourself, Mark. I don't think there's a lot I can say, really. But, like, to me, that with Wilson and Lawrence, they're just being sold down the river, particularly Wilson. There's absolutely nothing in New York. I think I said on Monday, it's an expansion-level team. It is. That roster is hopeless. Like, I don't know what they're expecting him to do with that team. And I'm not, you know, I don't particularly like the guy, and I'm not bothered if he fails, to be honest. But like, he's got no hope of succeeding at the moment because there's absolutely nothing there for him to work with. Lawrence, I think, has got a slightly different problem in that the roster isn't great, but it's not awful. But the way they're being coached right now and that offensive scheme is absolutely dismal. Urban Meyer looks like he's never coached a game of football before, which is a strange thing to say about a guy that's been so successful at the college level. But his offense is absolutely horrendous. And I don't know if there's a little bit of, we'll play it safe because Lawrence can bail us out. And maybe with a better team, he could do that. But right now, that just isn't there at all. So I'm feeling a bit for him. I think he's fine talent-wise, but I think that team is going in the wrong direction. And this is kind of true of him, Wilson, and to an extent Fields as well. You got to be careful what situation you put them in as rookies because you can do a lot of damage early. And also, if you keep changing head coaches and offensive coordinators, some players never get settled. You think about somebody like Alex Smith, 7 offensive coordinators in 7 years. How on earth do you improve? You're changing the way you're supposed to play every year on year. They've got to be very careful how they manage these QBs. Mac Jones, to me, is easily the best right now in terms of what he's able to produce on the field. The issue that I think he's having is that offense isn't actually very good. You look at some of the talent around it, they've spent a lot of money and they're not a lot better than they were last season. I saw a tweet on Sunday which said, Belichick the coach is far greater than Belichick the general manager. And I think there's some truth in that because some of the moves they've made have not worked at all. I think you wanted me to touch on Lance a little bit more. There's not really a lot to say. He's not getting the opportunities that the others are, with good reason. As I say, they don't want to throw rookies in there too early. I get that. We still think we're a contending team. But I kind of wish we'd used him a little more. I think it's interesting. We struggled in the first half on Sunday. He threw him in there, and it did kind of spark us a little bit, especially in the red zone. Shanahan's red zone percentage has actually gone up this year quite significantly from where it normally is. And I think that is a large part of having a different weapon to use in that scenario, something that defenses have got to account for. But I'd like to see him use it a little bit more because at the moment we look a bit stale on offense, especially with no running game. So interesting to see if he utilizes that more moving forward. Obviously, we've got Seattle this weekend. So if there's a game he's going to have a coming out party, and let's have it be that one.
Cheers, John. No, we'll get on to week 4 matchups next week, and it's not one that I'm putting on my list of things to look forward to. Just a quick one, John, back to you, because I was just about to ask you. Like, I saw Trey Lance in the first week, came in for a touchdown through. So we haven't seen much of the 49ers week 2 and 3. So he has been coming in and out. Is Jimmy G doing enough? Is there any danger of him coming out, Jimmy G, or is he looking good?
Get the bleep machine ready. I don't know. I'm trying to be more balanced. I think I want to see more from Garoppolo, but I feel like I've been saying that for the entire time he's been with the 49ers. So there comes a point where it's like, how much more are you going to get out of this guy? I think the concerning bit for me is, well, it's symptomatic of the way the whole team's playing, but I think a team is largely defined by its quarterback some of the time. He can have really good spells in games. He was excellent in the second half, but he was absolutely awful in the first half. And this is where you get people wanting Trey Lance in, because we kind of know what Garoppolo is. That's who he's always going to be. He's going to be one of those guys who plays well for maybe 60, 70% of the game, but the 30% that he plays badly, it could cost you the game. And I think it's that balancing act that I've talked about every time this topic has come up. It's that balancing act of like, okay, do we stick with Garoppolo, knowing what he is, and hope that he can ride what could be a contending roster all the way again? Or do we stick Lance in and hope we can get that extra 10%? But then there's that risk that you're actually going to fall further back because he's a rookie. And we're seeing what's happening to the rookies right now. Mark's right. If you're looking at what the rest of the rookies are doing, you'd be thinking, Jesus, don't put Lance in there just yet. But it is a far better situation. But I think Garoppolo's doing enough. I think he's going to have an absolute meltdown before he's yanked out of the lineup. I can easily see that happening in the next few games. But it kind of depends where we are. I think all season I've been kind of looking at potential like points where it could be the end for him. We've got the bye coming up in 2 weeks. Were we to lose both games coming up, I think the calls would be too loud to ignore at that point. I don't think we will lose both games, but if we did, I think that would be the definite end of it.
Yeah, you'll definitely win one of them. So, yeah, it's interesting rookie quarterbacks. Obviously, this is meant to be one of the best groups of rookie quarterbacks for a long time, with the depth, and it's funny to see them all struggling. Like I say, they are rookies. You can't expect the world of them sometimes. I know some come in and it works out well. It's just one of them things where you've got to like John said, you throw them in and you can lose a rookie after 5 or 6 games and the head's just gone. If you don't control it right. So it's really interesting to see how it goes on with them. With the schedules and stuff, if they get some wins together, it might improve their confidence. But it's definitely one to keep an eye on with them all struggling in different ways. Like say Mac Jones probably the highlight, but he's not pulling up any trees. So moving up to our final stock down, and it's we put the Washington defense in there, and I think we all were in agreement at the start of the season how good this defense was. And I don't know if it's obviously there's some good players in there. I don't know if it's more the lack of depth, and obviously probably a bit of underperforming as well. Bones, Washington defense. Do you think it's what do you think about it?
So I think the Washington defense as a whole is underperforming. I think a big spotlight is going to be on the D line, which I'll mention in a minute. But I think it's worth noting the defensive backs communication has looked poor. Linebackers have not been doing a lot. But I was reading an article. I think it was even today. In fact, earlier today, I was reading an article about the Washington defense where the defensive line were described as greedy. And that's part of the problem here is like Chase Young's so hungry for sacks. He's missing out on quarterback pressures. He's missing out on potential like tackles for loss on running backs because he's just so eager to get this sack. And like no one is doubting this defensive line's ability. But right now they're playing selfish and greedy. They're playing for themselves. They're not playing as a unit, it feels like. And I think that's, like they say, they're hugely underperforming what everyone talked them up to be this offseason. And maybe we gave them too much. Maybe everyone gave them too much credit. But like you say, right now, it does seem like there's a big there's an issue within the team more than there's not an issue with ability, shall we say. There's an issue with communication or play. The one question I did want to ask everyone, because obviously talking about Washington's defensive line, this is something very controversial that's come up this year, and in general, and has been a talking point, but roughing the passer. Chase Young's biggest potential sack of his only potential sack of the season, really, was called back for a roughing the passer call on Daniel Jones. That was one of possibly the lightest roughing the passer calls we have ever seen in NFL history. Like, it was kind of ridiculous. So, I mean, it was just a quick one I wanted to ask you, but like, how do we feel about that? Do we think this is something that is a big problem for players like Chase Young, who are big dudes? You know, that's 300 pounds a dude coming at you, and you're asking him to not fall on the quarterback, not tackle him a bit too hard, not anything. Like, it's crazy. Like, to me at least, I think these rules are overly protective of quarterbacks right now. But I wanted to put that out to the group because it's always a big talk.
Was Chase Young in the NFL last year? Yes. So Chase Young should know what roughing the passer is by now. This rule's been around, you know, it tightened up roughing the passer last year, basically. You know, look, NFL players should now know what roughing the passer is. If you hit them in the helmet, you're going to get called for roughing the passer. If you hit them late, you're going to get called for roughing the passer. If you tackle them with both feet off the ground at any point, you're going to be called for roughing the passer. And that's they should know that now. Max Crosby got flagged this week for it. And he was all, it was a boneheaded play because they let Miami Dolphins back into the game. You know, it actually stopped them on third down, I think it was, and give them a fresh set of downs because they got roughing the passer. You know, and it's, like, look, Chase Young was in the NFL last year. He should have known. Now, don't leap at the quarterback with both feet off the ground. Don't hit him in the helmet, and don't go to him late. You know, they should know what this rule is now. And as far as I'm concerned, whilst last year it was frustrating, this year it's boneheadedness. You know, like anybody who's getting called for it's boneheaded. Because, yeah, look, it might have been light, but if you hit him in the helmet, you're going to get called for it. It's a flag now. You know what I mean, Bones? And look, NFL players should be coached in that now. It's part of the game now. It's not fresh rule. It's been there for 12 months. I think what I want to see is, whilst we all looked at this Washington defensive front and thought that's really good, what we forgot is that there's nothing behind them. If you're playing this front 90% of the time, you're shattered by the fourth quarter, shattered by the third quarter. You know, like, it's great having 4 superstars on there, but if you haven't got a couple of adequate players behind them, then you're going to be gassed. I'm going to go back to the Raiders. The Raiders haven't got a superstar on their defensive line. Max Crosby, Yannick Ngakoue aren't top 10 elite defensive ends. They might well be in the statistics, but, you know, they're not like a Chase Young or a Myles Garrett or, you know, a Joey Bosa or even a Nick Bosa. You know, what they are is they're very good NFL pass rushers. And what we've got is we've got a lot of them. We've got Yannick Ngakoue, we've got Max Crosby, we've got Carl Nassib, we've got Solomon Thomas, we've got Phylon, we've got Quentin Jefferson. You know, there's 6 bodies there that I've just named off the top of my head. You know what I mean? And what that means is that we're bringing in a cycle of players continually. You know what I mean? Who are able to keep those 2 key ones fresh. We can take Max off for a couple of snaps and put Nassib on and feel confident that Nassib can do his job getting the quarterback. Do Washington have that same kind of luxury? It's like Sweat and Chase Young. If you're taking them off, who are you putting on? You know, and what it means that by the third or fourth quarter, they're shattered. And I think we overlooked that when we looked at this Washington defense and thought, oh, it's brilliant. We looked at their starters, but we didn't look at their depth. And I think we're going to have to maybe acknowledge that, you know, moving forward, it's the sum of a roster, really, isn't it? It takes more than a few standout superstars to be a good team.
Yeah, the thing I noticed, because like I say, when we talked about Josh Allen, I watched this game. You're right, the front four were knackered, and I think it's one of those things we talked earlier about needing a rotation at D-line, needing several good pass rushes. They don't have that right now. They can make that work, but they haven't really got a second level to the defense either. That I don't know if it was communication, as you say, Bones. I'm not sure what it was, but linebackers and corners were, for me, they were giving up the middle of the field quite frequently. Josh Allen thrives in those sort of games where he can make the simple throws. they were giving them far too many of those. Really bad safety play, really bad linebacker play. The corners themselves probably weren't too bad, but the guys you're reliant on for instincts and covering parts of the field, perhaps in zone coverage or whatever, they just weren't there for me. And I think it was just an all-round poor showing. I do think they'll get it right because of the fact that Rivera's coach, and I don't think he'll let it stand the way it is right now. Now, they can't do anything about the lack of depth on the D-line, but they can fix the other parts, and I think they'll be a better team when they do that. You've talked before, Mark, about coverage being more important than pass rush these days, and I tend to agree with that, and especially when you play a team like the Bills, because the Bills tend to be quite a shotgun-heavy team, a lot of short throws. I think they did the same to us last year, the infamous 35 first downs game. It was done in a lot of similar fashion, short throws against a decent pass rush, but knowing that they could exploit the second levels. I think they just ran headlong into a bad matchup, but I also think that it exposed some flaws that we'd seen in the other games as well. I mean, any team that gives up that number of points to the Giants has got something wrong. So I think there's definitely things to fix. I do think they'll fix it, but it isn't there right now. You can see why they drafted the linebacker in the first round as well. They obviously think there's an issue there. So interesting to watch going through the rest of the year, but it definitely wasn't the matchup for them this week.
Yeah, just to pick on a point that you said there, John, like from Mark, where he says how important the skill position of coverage, cornerbacks are. And I think it's so important, like as in, if you can keep the ball in the quarterback's hand as long as possible for your pass rushers to get into the backfield. Yeah, granted, some people can get there faster than others, but if you can tie up that coverage, the quarterback's got no one to throw to. It gives the defensive line so much more chance to get to the quarterback and put pressure on. I totally agree with that. I know Mark's been piping on about it for many months ever since I've met him, and he is right. It's so important. And if you're giving up easy yards, especially to people like Josh Allen, they're just gonna eat out there every week. And it's I don't know if they'll get it right. I don't. You might be right, John, but it'll be, like I say, it's an interesting one to watch. So that completes our stock up, stock down for week 3. We're going to move into our little areas that we like to bring up, and obviously I look at the rookie performance of the week. I've gone for Ja'Marr Chase on offense this week. He's actually picked up the offensive rookie of the month. He's been quite good across the board all month, but he scored 2 touchdowns. He only had 4 receptions off 5 targets, but still managed to get 65 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's really, obviously, he knows Joe Burrow very well. They know each other from college, and they've been brilliant. Like I say, he's picked up offensive rookie of the month. I wanted to go for Asante Samuel Jr. on cornerback, but since Mark pointed me in the area of Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and I do like him, I couldn't not put him in there. We've mentioned earlier with the Cleveland defense, and like Mark said, he had a pressure, a sack, 2 tackles for loss. But this guy can do it all. He was so effective in stuffing the run, against the Bears, and he doesn't look like a big linebacker at all, but he's so good at doing everything, and he's going to be such a talent. I still can't believe that they got him in the second round. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on Asante Samuel Jr. for the Chargers, because he had a brilliant game against the Chiefs as well. So that's That's the bookies of the week for me. JP, O-line of the week from our division, I believe.
Yeah, I started to think about this, and then I kind of realised there was no real competition when I thought about it. Gone with the Rams offensive line this week. Touched on it a little bit, I think, offline, but also and briefly on Monday's podcast as well. We've seen how good that Tampa defense is, particularly the pass rush. Arguably won them a Super Bowl, very arguably as it turned out the day after, but nonetheless, it's a very good defense, and it's an extremely good pass rush. The Rams completely stymied it, and I wouldn't have predicted that. I think going into the season, when we previewed the Rams, I think we said there isn't a lot on that offensive line besides Andrew Whitworth, and to be honest with you, I had to do some research on who actually starts on the O-line for the Rams, because they're not. It's not a known group of players. It's not. It's not big names, it's not household names, but what it is, and I did notice this, and I thought this was interesting. the interior, well, a large part of the line, there's 3 homegrown players on that offensive line, 3 guys they drafted, mid-round picks as well. We're not talking like first rounders here. We're talking second, third, fifth round picks. They've developed, it looks like, into a really good unit. They had some struggles last year, I think, because injuries kicked in, but they kept Stafford clean. And I think everyone knows if you do that, he's going to have a good game. You know, he arguably never had an offensive line as good as this one. Arguably never had a team as good as this one. And I think you see in the results. We can say good things about Stafford, rightly so. We can say good things about the scheme, rightly so. You know, McVay is a good offensive play caller. Stafford is a good quarterback, possibly great quarterback. But it means nothing if you can't block. We've seen that. Mahomes is probably the best quarterback in the league and basically got taken out of the Super Bowl. Equally, you look at somebody like the Bears, how good's Fields? Do we actually know? He's got 3 seconds to throw the ball, if that, every time he takes a snap. So, yeah, for me, the Rams kept everything clean, kept everything in front of them, won the game easily. And that's the other thing as well. Having gone in front, I thought they were excellent at being able to run the ball, keep the game away from Tampa. And that's an underrated thing as well. But I think the biggest thing at the moment in the NFL, you can find run blockers. I think you can coach anyone to run block. If they've got the size, you can coach anyone to run block. Pass blocking is a really specialized skill, especially against some of the edge rushers that you see today. The guys like Shaq Barrett, you know, people like that. These guys are hard to play against, but they did it perfectly. I was really, really impressed with them. It really annoys me because we're going to have to play them twice, and so are you. So are you, Jordan. But, like, yeah, they look a really good unit on the offensive line, probably for the first time I can remember in the last few years. They've always kind of had little issues there. But then you look at who's starting now. Like I said, they've got 3 homegrown players out there. And you think to yourself, they've gradually been building chemistry. They've got an experienced guy in Whitworth on at left tackle, which is, you know, quite a big thing as well. It makes a difference to have an experienced guy on your O-line, I think, somebody that's seen it all before. And, yeah, superb, absolutely superb. Be interesting to see how many weeks they keep it up for, because the Rams do tend to start fast. But, yeah, can't fault them so far.
Cheers, John. It's nice to have you this week for the offensive line. We've avoided it for the last few weeks because you know what you're talking about, and you are the boss man at that area. So thank you for that. Bones, I absolutely love this part. Voice of the voiceless. Who have we got this week?
So this week, there wasn't any particular standout one person, I guess, as such, but there was a position as a whole that occurred to me. I was talking to the guys about this earlier this week, and it's a position that's going to be on everyone's mind this week, and it's kickoff and punt returners. It's guys that we barely hear anything about, but then when you think about some of the biggest names in punt returning and kickoff returning, Deion Sanders, Devin Hester, Cordero Patterson, who's still playing today for the Falcons and having a pretty good season, in fact, like now that he's found a role outside of kick returning. Like these are exciting players. And the reason I brought this up is because obviously Jamal Agnew had a 109-yard field goal attempt return. So it falls in a weird place on most stat sheets because it's not a kickoff return, it's not a punt return, it's a different special teams play, and special teams yardage in general is often a lost yardage that we don't really talk about, but special teams are hugely important in the game of football, and it's one of the things that makes this a great sport. Is it's such a uniquely team-based sport that every phase of this game matters. Like your special teams is still important where most teams don't care. Like a lot of teams have like just any wide receiver as their kickoff return or any DB, but you get these few teams that will go out and they'll get a special kickoff returner. And Jamal Agnew obviously played his rookie season with the Lions, and I absolutely loved this guy. I think he got four returns whilst he was playing for us. Played a bit of DB, played a bit of wide receiver, never really found a role outside of that. Got 2 more returns already this year. He got 1 in the Denver Broncos game that was an actual kickoff return, and he got that, obviously, the one we saw against the Cardinals. That's 2 already in 3 games. Like, it's a pretty good start. I think one thing I did want to bring up with this is it's maybe not just the kick return, it's the whole kickoff return unit, because much like we've talked about with running backs, much like we talked about with all these other positions, is you need people in front of you, and kickoff returners need good blockers ahead of them. They need a good blocking unit to run them up the field with them. And if they've got that, that's what we've seen this year with both the Jags ones for Agnew, is the upfield blocking was outstanding. There was multiple plays where you'd see one player take out two of the kicking team, and Agnew's perfectly capable of making a couple people miss on his own as well, which combine those two things together, being able to make a couple people miss and having a blocking unit that can take a couple people out for you, you're going to get special teams yardage at the very least. And 109 yards on a TD is fantastic, but even just 10 to 20 yards a kickoff return beyond the 25-yard line is fantastic. That's incredible. That's one, maybe two downs that person can take away for you. These guys are fantastic players. Remember when people thought Tyreek Hill was just a kickoff returner? Look at him now. He's a fantastic wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs. These guys are absolute gadgets. And I honestly thought Agnew going to Jaguars we'd see him play more than just kickoff returns. I honestly thought Urban Meyer would have a field day with this guy. He runs a 4.3 40. He's not the biggest dude, but he's fast. He's rapid. He plays a decent back. He had a couple fumbles, false fumbles with the Lions, like I say. But I think that's the big problem with kickoff returners and punt returners in general, is how do you value them if they can't find a role outside of kickoff and punt returning? And that's where we have the problems. But I wanted to bring it up this week, like I say, because of Agnew. And I think, can Agnew be Devin Hester? Can he just make his entire career out of kickoff and punt returns? I honestly don't know. I think if he keeps it up, he's potentially on track to. But I think most of these players, much like we've seen Cordell Patterson do, like I mentioned earlier, need to find this secondary role within the team. Even if it's a backup, even if it's your second or third string running back, beyond that part of the depth chart as well. But kickoff returners and punt returners. Who talks about them? They're amazing. When they do go off, they're incredible to watch.
I feel like it's become an undervalued position, and it's largely because the NFL's tried to take the kickoff return, especially out of the game. Obviously moving the kickoff and such like. You're absolutely right, though. If you have a good one, it makes a big difference. Somebody that can flip the field, flip field position in a tight game, something like that, or make the big play and score a touchdown like Agnew did at the weekend. What frustrates me with a lot of these guys, and you kind of touched on it yourself, why don't teams find ways to use the skill set? You've got a guy there in Agnew that's fast and elusive. So why the hell is he only playing special teams? That offense has nothing right now. Design a few plays for him, get the ball in his hands, let playmakers be playmakers. You're right about Tyreek Hill. There's a lot of people saying, he'll never be anything more than a returner. Fast forward to getting Andy Reid, and suddenly Andy Reid knows how to work him into an offense. That's what creative coaches do, and that's why Urban Meyer fucking sucks. But we'll come back to that at some other point. But it frustrates me because in college you see it. There's no doubt if Urban Meyer had an Agnew in college, he would find a way. Well, Percy Harvin, he would have found a way to use him. NFL teams, for some reason, whether it's the inbuilt conservatism of how some of the offenses play, I don't know. But so many good athletic talents to me get a little bit wasted by the coaches, and that's the disappointing thing. They are great returners, but you get so few opportunities to get your hands on the ball as a returner. For God's sake, find a way to use them somewhere else. I don't know, just the thought I had when I watched Agnew at the weekend. He was excellent. You're absolutely right about kick returners. But find a way to use playmakers if you have them, especially if you're a bad team, because what else have you got?
I remember when, I think it's a few years ago now, 3 or 4 years, Seahawks actually signed Devin Hester when going into playoffs just for kick returning. And like you say, he put on 20, 30 extra yards in certain returns that put us in good positions. Obviously, Seahawks did Seahawks, and we didn't end up doing anything with it. We lost, but it just shows you how important these special teams can, especially in big games like that, can move you up the field further on to get into scoring positions. So, it's beautiful that you brought them up, Bones. You know what I mean? They deserve some recognition. Week 4 matchups we like. Obviously, I'm just going to jump in real quick and get mine out of the way because I don't really talk about it too much. But we know the NFC West are all going to be playing each other this weekend. I'd normally say I'm not looking forward to the Seahawks 49ers, but John will testify that no matter what the form is beforehand, it does not matter when it comes to in conference games. It goes out the window, and I'm still, like I say, I'm not looking forward to it. But the second game, that Rams Cardinals game, I think it's a 9:25 game. It's a standout one for me. I'm looking forward to watching that one. Obviously, to see the NFC West teams. Obviously, but we're going to be playing them later, but they've both started really well, and it'll be interesting to see if either defense can stop what has been a good offense from both sides so far. John, I know I've nicked NFC West off you. Is there anything apart from NFC West that you see, or are you looking forward to them?
Well, I'll just touch on that quickly. Massive week in the NFC West, as you say. I think we're going to see who's a contender, because I think potentially the losers of both those games are in trouble even this early in the year. It's certainly in our game, I think it's all or nothing, because both of us have had indifferent starts to the year. It's the kind of game that if you win, you could kick on from, but there's some pressure there. And you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter how either team's playing coming into it. It will be a close game. I have absolutely no doubt about that, one way or another. Away from that, it's actually another divisional game I've picked out. Well, I've got two others. So I've got Chargers and Raiders, which is I believe is the Monday night game. That to me is a huge game, because I don't really know what I think of either team at the moment. Chargers have knocked off the Chiefs, but they've also been their own worst enemy in a lot of games. They've given away a lot of penalties. They've made a lot of errors. They got away with it, as it transpired, against the Chiefs. The Raiders, I mean, I said on Monday, I can't argue with the record. They're playing well. They are playing well. Carr's having a great season, throwing the ball about as well as I can remember him throwing it. But we've seen this before with the Raiders, haven't we? They go on these runs occasionally, and you're just like, I don't know how you feel. To be fair, I don't know how you feel about it, but maybe you'll touch on it when you talk about your matchups. But with the Raiders, I'm always like, yeah, great. Where's it going to end? Because it's going to end somewhere. I don't know if it'll be this week. I actually fancy the Raiders to win that game, but I wish I could watch it. Unfortunately, I got to work Tuesday, so I can't. But I'm really looking forward to that game. The other game I picked out, and I don't think it's one most people would have picked out, but it's a similar reason to the one I've just described. Broncos-Ravens. Broncos are 3-0, but they've beaten three bad teams. The Ravens aren't a bad team, so it'll be very interesting to see how they go there. I think if they can win that game, that's some big confidence early in the year.
Yeah, there is some good games, and Mark, I'm going to come to you. Obviously, he's picked out the Raiders charge, and I'm sure you'll touch on some other games as well that you like the look of. If Raiders can get a win in this one and go 4-0 and just say Broncos lose, even if Chiefs win, you've got to jump on a few of you. I know it's a long way to go in the season, but it's a nice little jump on the rest of your division already.
This is our toughest game of the season so far, this Chargers game. One, it's in division, it's in our division, and they always count a bit. But also, teams are built to stop teams in their own divisions. They're drafted and built to stop teams. This Chargers team, it's like it's being built to stop us. Waddle's going to get shadowed by Derwin James. They've got Keenan Allen and they've got Austin Eckler, who are yards after catch machines. So you're going to have to be tight in that cover three. Whilst I don't think Mike Williams is going to have a really good game, I think that somebody like Keenan Allen, if anyone can turn a 5-yard dump off to a 20-yard gain, it's someone like Keenan Allen or Austin Eckler. And they're going to be playing lots of cover six. They've got Asante Samuel Jr. who's come in. I'm worried about this game. I said it to my mate earlier. I'd rather be playing the Chiefs because I think we're a better matchup against the Chiefs. I just don't think we're a very good matchup against the Chargers. John, fuck off. Like, we've beat three amazing good teams. We've beat three teams that won 10 games or more last season. So I'm not having your Raiders dampener. If anyone can dampen the Raiders, it's me. And I was saying to my friends earlier on today, I'm trying to find something to dampen my excitement because I don't want to be let down again. So even though we're 3-0, I haven't booked for LA Super Bowl tickets just yet. You know what I mean? If we go to the bye unbeaten, I might start thinking we're getting to the playoffs, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I'm very level-headed, like you, John. I've seen this before. I want to see us win in November. I want to see us win when it matters. It's great being 3-0, but I'm not getting too excited just yet. In terms of other games, I'm really looking forward to seeing Tom Brady go back to New England, me. I cannot wait for that game. I know it's on quite late. I'm going to be watching it. I'm just looking forward to that New England-Tampa game. I hope it's not on the same time as my Raiders. Is it the late night?
Late night Sunday.
Yeah, so I'll be able to watch it. Yeah, I'll be watching that game. I'll be up late watching that game. Really looking forward for the return of Tampa Tom to New England and what that's going to serve up. I'm quite looking forward to seeing them against the Panthers. You know, obviously the Panthers are missing McCaffrey. There's going to be a little bit more on Sam Darnold. I'm going to be interested to see if Sam Darnold can do a little bit more. And I think we'll get a proper true look at what this new Sam Darnold is without McCaffrey there. Those are the three games I'm looking most forward to: Cowboys, Panthers, the Raiders, Chargers, and New England and Tampa Tom. You know what I mean? New England Tampa Tom's going to be a cracking game.
Just before I go over to Bones, I didn't know who were going to bring the Buccaneers Patriots up, but you can't not like look through that list and see it. And no matter what they say in the pre, the pre-match talks and stuff, this Tom Brady versus Bill Belichick, they'll want to get one over on each other, most definitely. No matter what they say, there's all this talk about who made who great in New England and stuff. This is a big game to keep an eye on and stuff, and I might even stay up for it myself just to see. Obviously Buccaneers probably will be favourites still going in, but you just don't know. Bill Belichick could have a game plan for him. Bones, what about you? You see anything in there? I know Lions have got the Bears. Did you fancy your chances this week?
No. I mean, I feel like I don't talk about our team very often because I know there aren't that many fans out there, but for the few that we know, I mean, you might look at this game and think, oh, this is the Lions' chance to get a win on the season. But my problem with the Bears is, much like Mark said, is teams are built to beat inside the division. We have fully committed to being a run-first team this year, and the Bears, historically, pretty good against the run. Like, solid defense against the run, and that's all we've got this year. So, I don't know. I think after getting absolutely shellacked last week, I don't think the Bears are going to come back this week and get beaten again. I think they'll at least definitely give us a run for our money. The thing is, like the games that really stood out to me that have been touched on a little bit, Patriots, Buccaneers. I mean, especially with the news we've been hearing recently about when Tom was leaving, he wanted to speak to Bill, and Bill said he wasn't available, and apparently Bill Belichick's just a dick. Like, there's been loads of rumors about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick towards the end of this thing being like a bit at odds, and not so. It's just fuel to the fire, isn't it? It makes it more fun. Broncos Ravens, obviously, like, is the Broncos scoreline real? Like, that's an interesting one to watch. And the one that I want to watch because I want to see if they absolutely like just murder them is Titans Jets. I think Titans Jets, the Jets might just get pummeled to pieces and just be destroyed by look, they can't stop anything, so I don't know what's going to happen. I'm really looking forward to watching that one.
Yeah, this is what we love about the NFL. There's always matchups each week, but this is a good week, like obviously after it all, it might not be a good week for some of us, but looking at it, it's just some mouth-watering games there. And we're going to end, as we always do, on Mystic Mark, Bet of the Week. I want a PlayStation 5, Mark, before Christmas, you know what I mean? I know they're hard to get hold of, but I wouldn't mind saving up for one. So what have we got this week?
Well, this week, me bets on the pod didn't come off, but if you were in the chat, I did give you a treble, which did come off. So once again, I'm up again. Me double didn't come off. Me treble didn't come off, but me treble touchdown scorers did come off. And I know a couple of lads in the chat were lucky enough to back that, and it was 6.8 to 1. So if you were like me and you put a tenner on, you had £78 in your bank on Monday morning. So I've decided to do things a little bit differently. I think there's 3 games which are going to be high scoring games. I've taken the Rams versus the Cards. I've taken the Browns versus the Vikings. And I've taken New England versus Tampa. All those 3 put into a treble to go over the point scores. So take the Rams versus Cards to go over 55 points. The Browns versus Vikings to go over 51.5 points. And New England versus Tampa to go over 49 points. That's one of my bets. And I'm going to go back to the touchdowns. I really fancy Ron Gronkowski to go back to New England and to get a touchdown. I really fancy CD Lamb to get himself a touchdown grab this week. And I really fancy AJ Green to get a touchdown grab. I think there's going to be a lot of players throwing the ball around. Devonta Hopkins is going to be on. Is going to be followed by Jalen Ramsey, and I just think that AJ Green's going to be a red zone target for Kyler Murray this week. So I'm going Rob Gronkowski, CD Lamb, and AJ Green as a treble touchdown score as well.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yeah, so I'm hoping I'm going to be putting them all on again. You did give me some money with that treble in the chat with the touchdown, so I'm on my way to a PlayStation 5. So you need to keep it rolling, and hopefully we have some winners this week. So that's all we've got time for this week. It's been another fun episode. I've enjoyed it. I just love talking NFL. I'm sure these guys do too. And we'll be back at the same time next week for episode 20 with all the talking points from week 4. So all the best. Take care.